It is time for Around the 412 with Smitty and Tyler.
Welcome back to another episode of Around the 412. I'm Tyler. With me, as always, is my co-host Smitty. Be sure to follow us on all of our social medias at Around the 412. And whether you're listening on a listening platform or over on YouTube, leave us a 5-star review and subscribe to the channels. While you're on those channels, go check out the links that we have in the description. We've got a Facebook link for Everything Custom Designs. Our friend Haley Wagner's small business. You can see Smitty, if you're over on YouTube, wearing the shirt, the Around the 412 shirt that you can get for yourself. If you go check her out, we have that Facebook link so you can get in contact with her. She doesn't just have Around the 412 stuff. She did have Valentine's Day stuff, but Valentine's Day is over. But there's going to be plenty of holidays coming up, but she can do all sorts of stuff, not just holidays and not Around the 412 stuff.
Easter's next month. Stuff. Early Easter this year.
Early Easter. That's weird. That's weird. Or Easter is in March. So who knows? Maybe she'll have some Easter merch for you and your family. But go check her out. Facebook link, Everything Custom Designs on every single platform. Penguin show. The Penguins are sucking again. They've played 2 games. They played a back-to-back since the last time we spoke, and they suck again. Basically, everything that we talked about last week, where they were getting better, but from the previous episode,
the season's been though.
Throw it out the window because we're back to just a lot of pain and suffering. They lose 2 games in regulation. They lose 2 games in regulation to the Minnesota Wild and to the Winnipeg Jets. And not only do they lose them in regulation, but you know those games in hand that we have been talking about, that if they win those, they're in the race. They could be ahead of the Flyers. Well, they're just pissing those away because they're losing them in regulation, not getting any points back. And they're just not playing good hockey. And so I just beg the question, are they just a bad hockey team?
I feel like every week our conversation on here changes. Like, so that means next week, like they're going to win streak now. They got the Panthers, Blackhawks, and actually they might play 4 games because they play on Tuesday next week. So they're going to play 4 games probably before we record next. They'll probably go 4-0, and then we're going to be having a different like this is how the season has gone. But I don't know. Like, yeah, this past weekend, all the vibes that were high after that game right out of the break against the Jets came crashing back down to earth. A lot of the things that we've talked about, a lot of the warts, they've started to show again. The power play 1 for 9 within those 2 games. Nobody really outside of the SIDS line showing up on a regular basis. You're getting good goaltending. You're just throwing those performances away that you're getting in net. Like that game against the Jets, Tristan Jarry was very good in. Didn't matter. Nobody else showed up. So, I don't know where to go with this team, because again, it's like a rebuild. Like, people want to trade off. It's not even possible. Like, you can trade some guys away, but you truthfully cannot rebuild with the way that I almost said Steelers, the Penguins contracts are. Like, they have too many contracts on the books that either literally can't be moved or are going to be very hard to move, that don't make a rebuild possible right now. Like, sure, you can trade Jake Gensel. You can trade Riley Smith. Probably trade Marcus Pettersson. The contracts that are really weighing this thing down, that Ryan Graves contract, that Rickard Rakell contract, I don't want to lump Brian Rust in with those 2 just because, like, it's not that bad, but don't know that he's necessarily living up to that, what we gave him. Like, so again, I'll throw that one in a different bucket, specifically the Rakell and Graves ones. You can't do anything with those, like, or you're attaching an asset to move them. And at that point, does it make sense? Like, because if you're having to attach assets as opposed to acquiring them, which are what you need to kickstart a rebuild, does it make any sense? Like, they're kind of just in limbo right now. I feel like they have to kind of just be status quo.
Then I think we should change this conversation, because we've had this conversation multiple times this season, because like you said, we keep flip-flopping.
Yeah, every week people are asking us, hey, who's a trade target if they're a buyer, or who else can they trade besides Gensel if they're a seller? Yeah.
Let's change this conversation then to not should they rebuild, but should they try to have, and I know that we've had somewhat of a conversation about this probably at least a month ago, maybe a little longer, discussing Mike Sullivan and his tenure as Penguins head coach. I feel like that's naturally where I would go next if you were not going to commit to a rebuild and you're not committing to like they're not going to be hard buyers at the trade deadline. They don't have the cap room to be able to do that. But with the team that you have in hand, should Kyle Dubas and the Penguins organization look at continuing this Penguins? I mean, maybe even this season, but at least after this season moving forward, should they continue to try to win with the people that they have in-house right now under a different head coach? Because if you're not going to be able to commit to a rebuild, and you pointed out the reason why, you have those contracts that you're tied up to, so you're not really good enough to win, but you're also not really good enough to like be one of the worst teams either and really sell to it. Should they naturally look somewhere else? And I feel like that natural look is to the head coaching position and see if somebody else can get more out of this hockey team as currently constructed. Because I've always said that I can't envision the Penguins rebuilding as long as Sidney Crosby's on the roster. I don't. And I know I said that if they traded Gensel, you should trade everybody. But it's just hard for me to imagine having Sidney Crosby, despite his age and everything and where he's at in his career, because he's still at over a point per game player. Just because of that fact, it's hard for me to ever see them rebuilding when he's on the team. So should they try or should they experiment with a different head coach and see if they can get more out of this team? Because if you're not going to be able to change the team itself for your coach, something's got to give at some point.
The short answer is yes. I think that you give a different head coach the shot to see what this team looks like under him, because you can't make enough changes with this team like you can change one coach overnight. Now, will you get different results, better results? I don't know, but you can't just completely redo an entire team overnight. Like that literally can't happen. So the coach is much easier to do, obviously, but I don't think that that's what's going to happen. Like they just recently gave him a new contract. How many times have we heard Kyle Dubas talk about Mike Sullivan and him being a part of this process together? What I could realistically see happening, though, excuse me, is the assistant coaches being pretty much completely redone after this season. And then next season is really the time when we have this conversation about Mike Sullivan. I don't think it's this. I think we're a year early talking about it. I think if say they miss the playoffs this year, you're going to go into next year having missed the playoffs 2 seasons in a row. I don't know that there's going to be that much patience from Kyle Dubas and Fenway Sports Group. I think like this year with the state, they can't be blind to it. They have to realize how bare the bottom 6 of this team is and the contributions that they're getting. But I think some of it has been Dubas's doing. A lot of it was mistakes that were made prior to him being here. But again, we can't let him off the hook. Hey, Ron Hextall did not sign Ryan Graves to a 6-year deal.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's some things for sure that Kyle Dubas has done that Ron Hextall did not do. But largely, he's cleaning up a mess right now, and it's not going to be different overnight. They've done a good job in terms of preventing goals, 3rd least amount of goals allowed, and is that completely on the goaltender, or is that a product of them getting better in their own end? I think it's primarily the goalie, but I do have to give them credit. I think they've been a better transition defense for sure. I still think there's some to be desired in terms of actually in zone defense in their own end. I'm getting a little bit off track here, but yeah, I think we're a year early on the Sullivan conversation because I don't think it's a conversation for the organization until next year.
That's fair. I think that's fair, but is it too late at that point? Because
could be, yeah.
They have to re-sign Gensel if that's the case. You can't lose him in free agency, because I think regardless of whether they trade him or regardless of whether they lose him to free agency, if Gensel is not on the opening day roster outside of an injury, okay, don't hold me to that wording. If he's not on the opening day roster next year, your team's not as good and you're not going to be competitive. And I firmly believe that, because I don't think that, especially at the price that you could get Gensel for the output that you get from Gensel from anybody else that you could bring in, you're not going to be able to bring in anybody like that. You're not going to be as good, especially from a team that your first line is the only one that drives offense consistently night in and night out with Sid and Jake. You're not going to be able to be as good. And so I don't think it's a fair assessment if you go into next season if you don't have Jake Gensel on the roster.
Yeah. No, I agree. So not what you want, but what you think will happen. How do you think the Gensel thing plays out?
I do think they re-sign him, because I think the Penguins their backs are against the wall on that. I don't think they have any other choice, and I think that's very clear. And I mean, how much cap do they have this offseason? I'm on Cap Friendly right now. Let me just check real quick. Salary cap, projected cap space. There we go. This offseason, they're projected at $17.2 million because of some free agents they have. Free agents they have are Jansen Harkins, Alex Nedeljkovic, Chad Ruedel. POJ is an RFA. I'd still be interested in seeing what you could dangle out there with him as far as like trade options. If you're looking to
Jeff Carter's off the books.
Jeff Carter's off the books, and then obviously Jake Gensel's contract is off the books, but you'd be looking to re-sign him and give him a little bit of a raise. I think it's realistic that the Penguins could sign Jake Gensel, and I think that they need to. And I genuinely believe what I say. Like, I don't think that you're going to get a better option outside of the Penguins organization for what you get for Jake Gensel, or from Jake Gensel, than just re-signing him. Any free agent that you can bring in, one, you're going to overpay for. It's free agency. If you're not bringing in your in-house kid, you're going to be able to overpay because that's just kind of how free agency works. You're not going to trade for anybody because the Penguins, while Kyle Dubas has the job of trying to stay competitive right now and try to win this team a Stanley Cup, he also has the job of rebuilding this team while they're still being competitive, which is a tricky task to do, but you're not going to be able to do that by trading away all your assets. So they're not going to trade anybody that can be a scorer like Jake Gensel so I think that their hands are kind of tied in the situation. And I think it's probably similar to what the Tristan Jarry situation is, except obviously it's viewed at differently because of what those players were in free agency. But in the sense of Tristan Jarry, it was almost like they had to bring him back because there was no other options that were good enough for a goaltender this season. I feel like that's the same thing with Jake Gensel, and except for not that there's not going to be any other options that they could go about to get a scorer like that, but I don't think there's going to be any other options that are going to be more realistic than bringing in your talented guy that you already have, that you know you're going to be able to get the best contract from, not some free agent, and you're not going to have to trade assets for him.
Yeah, I mean, even looking at free agents, like anybody that would even be somewhat comparable, like what are the chances that they even hit free agency? Like Gensel's the one it seems like people have the most question about. Like nobody's really talking about Sam Reinhart. Like he's going to be re-signed by Florida. Elias Pettersson, he's to be re-signed by Vancouver. And then you're getting down to like older guys like 33-year-old Matt Duchene, Steven Stamkos. Like those are the guys that are free agents this year. There's nobody within like that bucket like we're talking about here with Gensel. I mean, there's only 3 pending UFAs this year that have 50 points. It's Jake Gensel, Sam Reinhart, and Elias Pettersson, the 3 guys I just mentioned. And then you have a bunch of 33-year-old or plus guys until you get down to like Casey Middlestat, who's 25, Lucas Raymond, who's 22, Seth Jarvis, who's 22. Again, you know, at their age, like these guys probably not hitting free agency. It's not a great free agent class, by the way. I mean, I don't know. I think it's interesting. It's almost like if they do let Gensel go, whether it's via trade or, you know, if they somehow get to free agency and he walks, I almost feel like they're not going to even replace him right away. Like it's almost like that's when they, again, you can't really rebuild, but that's when they look to not add salary or like, you know, spend to the cap the way that they have.
And that's where you fall into the scenario that I was talking about, that you're just not going to be as good because you're not going to be able to bring anybody in. Obviously, that helps out a cap situation. It helps you from not getting tied up into a contract.
Market? I don't know.
But at the same time, they don't have the assets to be able to do that. What assets do they have besides picks? And you're not going to get better without your picks. I mean, we learned that your farm system does not get better when you keep trading away your first-round picks. And to get a talent like Jake Gensel, you're going to be trading away for at least a first-round pick. They're in a no-win situation, but their only win is re-signing him. That's the only outcome where the Penguins come out on top. Otherwise, I think it's a loss.
They're going to get, say they do trade Gensel, and it's similar to like the Claude Giroux trade that Friedman threw out there. First, a third, and a play, you know, a prospect / NHL player, guy that's pretty close. Owen Tippett was the player that was traded from Florida. to Philly in that, and he's a pretty good player. But say it's something comparable to that. What if they just turned around and traded basically those same assets to somebody else for a guy with control that is like, a Jake Gensel type player?
So you're saying a first, a third, and
maybe not all of it, but I'm just saying something that they've recouped in the Gensel trade for, a number one left wing.
Then that's more swallowable, but that guy better have a contract.
And I don't even
already.
know a name. You know what I mean? Like, yeah,
that's what I mean. Yeah, I know what you're saying, but like that would be easier to swallow. But I still think that I don't think that you're going to get a better option than just re-signing him. I understand that you already have a lot of contracts on the books, but you're going to be able to find a way to get out of some of those. Whether you like it or not, you're going to be able to find a way to get out of some of the contracts you don't want to. You're not going to be able to find another option when it comes to replacing Jake Gensel. So you need to just sign him.
Can we get Dallas to trade us Jason Robertson?
No. No. Why would they do that?
I don't know. I'm looking at the best left wings in hockey.
The best that's our how do you guys find your trade options? Well, we just Google the top ranked players in the league, and then we filter.
You guys came up. Yep. I don't know. Yeah, it's a very unenviable position, I think, for Kyle Dubas and company with where this team is at, with the assets that they have, with the contract situation of Jake Gensel, to try and decide how to approach this. I don't know. I think we got 2 questions here involving actually one's not even a question. It just says thoughts. This is from Clark, which, by the way, last week's episode pretty much entirely because of Clark. You guys are welcome for that, though, with the WrestleMania card completely of Penguins. Phil Kessel is in Vancouver to meet with the Canucks, and Clark said, "What are your thoughts?" Interesting. It makes sense. Kessel could work out great for him if this pans out and he does sign with the Canucks, to just, obviously basically take half the season off, then sign with a contender, living the life, man. We'll see if it comes to fruition. Interesting fit, but like Rick Tocchet's the head coach there, so it makes sense, right? So
I think Jim Rutherford's the president of hockey ops there. So
yeah,
he just can't help himself.
Who's the other guy that's with him? That used to be with the Penguins, his assistant GM. Something with an A. Patrick Alvin. Yeah, he's there as well with Jim Rutherford. So, yeah, I mean, it makes sense. It checks a lot of boxes for Kessel. Don't know what the role would be for him, but we've talked a lot about the power play stuff, right? Even if he's a guy that goes there and just gives them a little bit of a shot in the arm on the power play, I think it's a win for them. That's a team that's obviously going to be playing in the postseason. Guy that's played a lot of postseason hockey in his time in Pittsburgh. I like the fit.
I like the fit too. Honestly, I'd probably like the fit on Pittsburgh right now, if I'm being completely honest.
Sure. Yeah.
We need something to fix the power play, and we need something to get that middle six going. I would not turn my nose up at a Phil Kessel reunion. I mean, you got to throw everything at the wall this season. And
I agree.
But
we had
yeah,
Jesse
I like
Puljujarvi playing top 6. So
that's what we're saying. That's what I'm saying. Man, I would
nothing against him, but
I wish I could trade for Kasperi Kapanen right now. That's how I feel.
What do you think Brock McGinn's up to in Anaheim?
Dude, I mean, we joke, but a player I wish was on our roster right now, Evan Rodriguez.
Oh man, yeah. I mean, he's pretty much in that. You know how I feel about Jared McCann. Evan Rodriguez is right there for me with guys that got away.
Freddie Gaudreau. I would also like to have him back too.
We can just sit here all day and name these. The way that their scoring has fallen off, though, is just insane. And it's this year's even worse than last year. We were complaining about their lack of scoring depth last season. What would we give to have last season offensively in this year defensively? Yeah.
They might be a decent hockey team. But alas, the amount of players that we have between 2018 to now that we could say, how good would they be on this team right now? Or how much do we want them on this player right now? Yeah. Honestly.
Last year's Jason Zucker?
Yeah. What he signed for? 1 year, $5 million?
Maybe 5.5.
Man.
It was less than 6 for sure. Somewhere between 5.
Well,
and
hell,
6.
give him 6 at 1 year. I don't care.
Yeah.
Man. There's several players that you look at. It's like how are they not on the Penguins anymore?
The second question was thoughts on finding a second line center and moving Gino to the wing. I do think that this is going to be coming down the pipeline, at some point in Gino's like the very tail end of his career, we could possibly see that happen. The thing is, man, like the defensive impacts haven't been bad for Gino this year. I was talking to Danny Shirey about it when I saw that this question got asked, because I didn't want to seem like super stupid on here and be uninformed about the way that his defensive impacts have been. They were actually very, very good at the beginning of the season, kind of tailed off right now. But you almost wonder, like, okay, he's had 2 maintenance days recently. I don't know if you saw yesterday at the time of recording this, that he was like just skating around in gym clothes and like wasn't actually participating in team practice. I was a bit worried about him not being in the lineup. Like I thought maybe he was dealing with a little bit of an injury or something, but then he was back at practice today. So seems to be good, but you just wonder, like, is he dealing with something right now? Is that maybe why we haven't seen, the best version of Gino? Like the beginning of this year, him and Riley Smith looked great together. All of a sudden, just doesn't look like the same player. Even if the points are like that, like he's not having like long scoring droughts or anything like that where he's left off the score sheet. But like if you're actually watching the games, I don't think that Gino's look the same to me. And I just wonder if something maybe is up.
I mean, that would make sense because that line kind of fell off a cliff rather quickly. So moving him to wing feels inevitable at some point. But they got a good. They don't even have a good enough like. They don't have a good enough like.
Well, that's why this question was asked. Yeah, like acquiring a second center.
They would have to. Maybe that's who they required to replace the Gensel score.
Hey, they could have signed and I don't know how this conversation went. And I think I brought this name up already. Maybe he like wanted to play in that area, but Matt Duchene signed with Dallas for like $3 million, and he's got 40-some points this year. Like, imagine if they make that signing as opposed to like Noel Achari or something.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of things could have changed. Also, I just realized by looking at the standings, how do the Penguins still have 5 games in hand on the Flyers?
Because Penguins haven't played. Like the Flyers just played, right? And the Penguins have had another stretch. They went Saturday to Wednesday. They're going Saturday to Wednesday without playing.
Like I'm looking
now.
At
it's about to be like every other day.
The Flyers have played 64 games or 54 games, excuse me, and they have 64 points. The Penguins have played 49 games. They have 53 points. If they win all 5 of those games, they're only a point behind the Flyers. So, we're talking very negatively. Obviously, they're not in like the worst spot in the world when it comes to the standings. Yeah. There's still a lot of room for improvement, but like they could get into a decent spot. And when you look at like wild card potential, looking at some of these teams, they've only had 1 game in hand with like Toronto, who has 60 points. They got 2 games in hand on Detroit with 60. Those are both tied. But they've got several games in hand among like Islanders and Capitals. They have 2-3 games in hand with some of those teams. So there's ground to make up, and it's capable. But man, they just got to stop.
That's why
we
were talking
like
about
the idiots.
That's why I brought up the 4-point games. Through a lot like the stretch of hockey that they have on the stretch of the season, like specifically in April. Every game really is going to be a 4-point game because they're playing these teams every night. So, yeah, I mean, again, I'm not like super optimistic with the way things have looked recently, but like, it's there for the taking. They're going to be able to control their own destiny with the way their schedule is.
Yeah. Well, they do get one of these 4-point games this week. They have the Panthers obviously tomorrow night, which is hold on. I'm trying to not break the fourth wall, but break the fourth wall. This episode's going to come out after the Panthers game, right? So, okay. So
wait, yeah. It'll be Thursday.
Yeah, it will.
So
it'll be Thursday. So who knows? Maybe they won a game. Maybe we should be more pissed than we are right now, though. But then they play the Blackhawks on Thursday, so they have a Wednesday, Thursday back to back. And then they play on Sunday against the LA Kings, and they play the Islanders, which is one of those 4-point games that we're talking about next Tuesday. So we'll have 4 games to talk about on next week's episode. 3 of the 4 games are at home. So you want to make up some ground. This is where you do it.
There we go.
I'm not confident, though.
We'll see. We'll see what the next week brings. The big week. I mean, 4 games we're talking about probably before we record next. So we'll see. Did they dig themselves a deeper hole or are they starting to climb out of it? Shall find out. Anything else?
No. I just wish hockey was fun again. It stinks because football's over, and now
really
normally this time of year wouldn't feel as bad to me because okay, it's okay. We're not to just baseball yet. We get some hockey in between, but your hockey team stinks now too. So it's not as fun as it used to be.
Well, we're about to talk about baseball as soon as we're wrapping up here. So pitchers and catchers about to report. Go check out our Pirates episode when it drops. The time you guys are watching, listen to this, it's probably tomorrow. But yeah, like, subscribe, hit that notification. If you hit the notification bell here, you're gonna know when every single episode is dropped. So just be sure to do that. Hit us in the comments with anything that we talked about, questions for future episodes, all that good stuff that I say on every episode. Check out the description, everything custom designs. Get yourself a custom shirt, hoodie, whatever you want, except hats. Cannot get custom hats from Everything Custom Designs. Yeah, the title, the name, very misleading. Everything Custom Designs, not really everything. So a lot of different stuff you can get from her. I'm thinking about it. Our friend Haley Wagner, Small Business, go check that out. The link is in the description. Leave us a 5-star review if you're listening, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts from. Smitty, for Tyler, this has been around the 412 Penguins show. We'll see you guys next week. Bye-bye.